From a highly secure network of top secret locations across North America, this is the Spurs Insider Cornucopia edition. I'm your host, Mike Finger, joined as always by our panel of Express News Spurs beat writers Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn, along with Express News sports editor Nick Talbot. It's Thanksgiving week. We're taking stock of things. We're getting ready for a feast. Some of us getting ready for feasts. Jeff McDonald is in a secure location in Utah, which is what I think of when I think of Thanksgiving. And we're, as a podcast, as a sports department, getting ready to work till June because the San Antonio Spurs, the local Cagers, might be, Jeff McDonald, a good basketball team.
Why don't you calm down a little bit? Not June, maybe May.
Okay.
Like tap the brakes a little.
Okay, we'll show. We need a sober voice here. I guess that's appreciated.
Oh, that's not me.
Yeah, that was kind of the joke. Since we last convened on the Spurs Insider, we met the morning of the Oklahoma City game on TNT, which seems like a long time ago, and we were all sort of okay with not discussing that because even though the podcast reached our listeners, digital players, on Wednesday morning, we figured there wouldn't be that much to talk about in a game in which Victor Wembanyama didn't play, Devin Vassell didn't play, Jeremy Sohan remained out, and they were playing against the best team in the West. But they won that game on TNT. They came from behind against the Utah Jazz 2 nights later without Victor Wembanyama, won that game, and then against the Golden State Warriors, came from behind in that game with Victor Wembanyama. It's been a heck of a week.
It's a pretty good 3-game winning streak, right? They beat the Thunder and the Warriors at the time they came into the Frost Bank Center, were respectively the top teams in the West. Like the Spurs knocked the Warriors from the top spot. I mean, the Thunder from the top spot by beating them. Then the Warriors come in with the top spot, and the Spurs beat them, and then sandwiched around that is that game against Utah where it was the biggest comeback victory of the season. So lots of good stuff in there. And as you mentioned, 2 of those wins were pretty shorthanded, and one of them they had Victor for. So they won in a lot of different ways, and all those wins were good in a lot of different ways. And I think that's one thing that was encouraging about that week. It's not that they beat up on bad teams. It's not that they lucked out and won this game or that game. They actually beat 2 really good teams and then kind of messed around against Utah and came back and won. So good job for the Cagers.
Tom, has your opinion of this coming season, the rest of the season, changed as a result of how the Spurs have played lately? Are you overreacting?
Yeah, no, they're a good team. Not a great team, but they're maybe a 500 team. Although, as we pointed out, the schedule has helped them a little bit with teams coming in on the second night of back-to-backs. But, a common thread from the week, the play of Harrison Barnes.
That is, that might be the most, and I don't mean, I'd love me some Harrison Barnes. I got the notification yesterday that Harrison Barnes was named Western Conference Player of the Week. And that might have taken me by more surprise than any announcement I've ever seen about a San Antonio Spur winning Western Conference Player of the Week, because he had a great week, but wow, it wasn't until I saw the announcement that I was like, wow, that he really did have a good week. A lot of other stuff was going on. You had a big Chris Paul week, a big Steph Castle week, but Harrison Barnes just quietly doing his thing.
You know who should get kudos for that award is the Spurs PR staff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm told there was a lot of stumping going on and a lot of making the case. And it is odd because, this is a league where guys regularly score like 40 all the time. And usually those awards go to guys that have had those weeks where they've had 35 and 40 and, just 3 steady 20-point games, which was awesome, usually doesn't win that award. So hats off to Spurs PR for making that case to whoever it is, the league office that makes that pick. But Barnes was huge in that winning streak. He had he hadn't been really part of the offense. He's just kind of a glue guy, and all of a sudden he explodes for 3 straight 20-point games, and gets Western Conference Player of the Week. And I think I saw the stat yesterday that he is the the longest tenured player in league history to win that award for the first time.
That's something. That's good for him.
In your 13th year to win your first Western Conference Player of the Week award that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think I speak for the podcast when we say we've known Harrison Barnes. We've been hanging around Harrison Barnes for less than 2 months, and all I think genuinely happy for the guy. He just seems like a good dude. Great addition to the locker room. Great addition on the floor. We started this season of podcasts by saying that maybe it wasn't that important for Harrison Barnes to be a productive, a all-star level type player for the Spurs. Like, they didn't add him for that.
Not all of us.
It turns out he's giving way above what I expected him to give.
Yeah,
What'd you say, Tom?
Tom was the one that he didn't say that.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom has been on the Harry B bandwagons from the beginning.
Yeah,
I think it's funny if you think back to our early podcast this season from the preseason. We were talking about how Barnes just kind of looked old and washed, and he goes from that to Western Conference Player of the Week, which kind of shows that we don't know what the heck we're talking about over here.
Yeah, it's there's just all kinds of surprising developments lately, and this after again a series of podcasts in which the Spurs pretty much did what we expected them to do week to week. This is the week that has, I think, been a genuine shocker. Like when nobody saw 3 victories in a row coming last week. I think we predicted their record correctly in all the previous weeks, but this was the one that kind of made us take notice. And Tom mentioned the schedule earlier. I kind of want to take a look at that. I'm not sure this is the discussion that's going to make this particular episode go viral. But there are 2 ways to look at the Spurs' schedule so far. One of them is that they've played way more home games than road games, and they've been way better at home than on the road. So you could say there that they've had an advantage, that things are going to get tougher. That's true. Tom pointed out, I think they've had 3 pretty big victories against teams that have come into the Frost Bank Center on the second night of a back-to-back. That was Minnesota, that was Golden State, and that was, who was the third one?
I believe it was OKC.
I believe it was OKC. So that's an advantage there. But the flip side of this is that the Spurs have played all but 1 game. They were 9-8 heading into Tuesday night's game at Utah. 16 of those 17 games have been played against the Western Conference. They played only 1 game against the putrid, terrible, up to no good Eastern Conference. And so I think when you look overall, I looked at Basketball Reference earlier this week, projecting their schedule. It's a pretty neutral schedule the rest of the way. Like, there's not a schedule advantage or schedule disadvantage the rest of the way. All the road games are counterbalanced by all the Eastern Conference games they have coming up. So I think when you say, like Tom mentioned, this is a 500 team, that's what their record says. He says they can continue to be that for the rest of the year. I think there's reason to believe that they could. Like this, I don't think the schedule is going to get so tough at any point where it's just unmanageable. So I thought that was interesting.
I think if they were in the Eastern Conference, I would entertain the conversation of, hey, maybe they could make the playoffs this year in the East.
Yep.
West is probably going to be too big a load. But
well, okay, if you're just looking at play-in, and this is ridiculously early, and we're overreacting to a week of games. That's what we do on podcasts. There are 3 teams that I think the Spurs feel pretty confident about their ability to remain ahead of. And that would be the bottom of the West, which is your Utah, your New Orleans, who's just ravaged by injuries and bad luck, and then your Portland. And then to make the play-in 10th spot, you'd need to stay or be ahead of two other teams. And to me, the candidates there are, and I don't care what the records say now, both of your LA teams, I think you could see sort of falling apart down the stretch because they have old people. They don't have the best mix. Like the Lakers have looked great, sure, but that could fall apart at any moment. That's a team that you could move ahead of. And then like Sacramento, maybe. Sacramento hasn't been awesome. I don't think any of those are likely, but those are the types of teams that you might squint and be able to say maybe they don't make the play-in. Memphis gets hurt again.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're just sitting around waiting for Memphis to get horribly injured because they do every year.
Yeah. Minnesota's trade splash in the offseason has not looked great so far. The Julius Randle thing, boy, that's been tough. I still think they're probably a top 10 team in the West. But any of those teams takes a big injury, an injury that costs them a star player for a month or two, and that window of opportunity opens up for the Spurs. I don't think it's as unlikely as I thought it was a week or two ago that the Spurs could sneak into a 10th spot there. So that's something to look forward to the rest of the way.
Speaking of injuries, Spurs have been rather resilient. Without Jeremy, Devin, Wemby here and there.
The games without Victor were really something else, man. Like, how on earth did they pull those off? You had two Charlie Bassey crazy games where if you get those kinds of games from Bassey back to back, I think the Spurs will take that to the bank. Like, you're never expecting to get that kind of production from him.
Yeah,
and good on him for doing it.
You got Chris Paul winning you a game in the fourth quarter, one of those against Utah.
We haven't even mentioned Chris Paul yet in this podcast, but what a week he had. Talk about it, Jeff.
Well, I just overall, I've been, and maybe this shouldn't come as a shock, but I've been really impressed at the impact he has made on this team. And I think we all kind of assumed he'd have this sort of impact, but I think he's surpassed expectations, my expectations. I'm not even talking about on the floor where he's been pretty good. Just listening to him talk about this team and what he tells the younger players and how he teaches them and instructs them, and I think all that has been really, really good for this team. You see it. I feel like you can see a difference in a lot of players this year in their confidence level and their and just the way they approach the games. They when Pop was around, he used to talk about different players like feeling like they belong. It looks like the whole team kind of feels like they belong. The thing from Chris Paul is, we've heard him say it a million times already, is these guys have to expect to win. They have to come in and learn and expect to win every game, no matter who we're playing. We're good enough to compete with anybody, and this team is starting to believe that. It doesn't mean they win every game, but the way this team plays, they don't get shell shocked as much like they did last year. And I think a lot of that is the Chris Barnes. I conflated the names, but it's both of them, Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, bringing that professionalism and experience to the locker room. And as much as they're contributing on the floor, I really can't state enough how much I think they meant to this team behind closed doors.
And then you got, as Chris Paul said the other day, you got the 20-year-old rookie acting like he's a 39-year-old veteran.
That's the guy we need to talk about. What is it too soon to talk about what happens with Steph Castle when everybody is healthy?
Probably.
Is he still starting?
Probably. It's probably too soon because these things work themselves out.
Yeah.
But sure. Let's do it. If everyone is healthy at the same time, you figure you have the projected opening night starting lineup, which was not the opening night starting lineup because Devin Vassell wasn't healthy at that point. But the projected lineup heading into the year was Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Harrison Barnes, and Victor Wembanyama. To keep Stephon Castle in the starting lineup, whenever everybody is healthy. That means sending Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, or Jeremy Sochan to the bench. I'm not sure that happens. I'm not sure this will come up because there's just always somebody with an injury at some point. But 100% health, that's what you need to do. I can see it both ways. I can see the argument to keep Stephon Castle starting and playing alongside Chris Paul. I wrote about that relationship, which we've all mentioned, and I find just fascinating and riveting and really interesting. The Chris Paul, Stephon Castle dynamic. Our good friends at TNT inside the NBA, which is going to continue to be produced for years to come. We've heard good news for those folks. Good news for our old friend Dan McCarney, who's going to stay working for the NBA for years to come, thanks to the new deal. They pointed out on their show last week that the largest age gap between starting teammate guards in NBA history was De'Aaron Fox and Vince Carter, who were like 20 years apart for 3 games back in like 2018. The second biggest age gap is Chris Paul and Stephon Castle, who have been starting a bunch of games together and might continue to. And that dynamic, like they're really good. If you can break down the efficiency by lineups, and you can break down two-man combinations in the Spurs in every team's net efficiency. And the best two-man lineup the Spurs have used this year for at least, I think, 100 minutes, weirdly enough, is Julian Champagny and Stephon Castle, which may or may not be reflective of anything significant. But the second best is Chris Paul and Stephon Castle, which matches the eye test. I think the third best is Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama, which is the 2 star players. But the point is, like, those 2 guys, Chris and Stephon, play really well together. And you want to kind of maximize that. So that's an argument to keep Stephon playing with him. You could also switch things up and use a finishing lineup as opposed to a starting lineup. But yeah, there's different ways you can do it. I just think Steph and Chris together really give you something.
I agree. You'll have to figure out a way to keep some shooting in those lineups, though.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have a Vassell in there or a Champagny in there to balance it out. You can't have a bunch of guys who can't shoot. That would be a problem.
Right. The other thing is, let's say, I won't bore the listeners with listing every one of the top 10 players, but if you start that lineup that we talked about, the opening night lineup, then the next 5 guys, you don't necessarily have a power forward of a 4 to play. You have 4 sort of wing. You have Trey Jones, 3 wing players, and Zach Collins. Just position-wise, like the easiest thing to do would be to send either Sochan or Barnes to the bench as your backup forward. I'm not sure you want to do that. Like, here's the thing for Mitch Johnson. Same as it was for Greg Popovich. Same as it was for every NBA coach. It's not just about, fantasy basketball, putting the best statistical lineups together. You have to manage personalities. You have to manage just what sending someone to the bench or putting them in the lineup. How does that affect confidence? How does that affect interpersonal chemistry? All that type of stuff. Like, that'll be interesting to see how Mitch manages it when it comes up. This is a segue into the fact that I think Mitch Johnson has done a really, really good job as an NBA head coach so far.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, no, he's pushed all the right buttons. He's maintained Pop's basic program, which was smart. He's made some good in-game adjustments. Yeah, I mean, you can't criticize him really at all. I mean, he's done a great job.
It's been a big week for him. Coming back on Oklahoma City, coming back on, Steve Kerr and the Warriors. Like, this is a big Mitch Johnson week.
This might be way too hot takey podcasty, but is there something to the fact, like, Jeff was raving in the media room the other night about how great this Spurs team has been in third quarters this year. Is how much of that is just on a head coach making some halftime adjustments, not giving up, pressing the right buttons coming out of halftime?
I think it's the Newt Rockney speech at halftime. Just crib-a-popism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's something to it that, like
probably.
you can't look at anything. The one of his first games as the acting head coach, they blew a big lead at the Intuit Dome against the Clippers, which happens. The Spurs have done that many times over the years. Lots of NBA teams have blown big leads, especially in recent years. That didn't reflect great on the coaching staff, but like he's done it in reverse more times than that happened. And Jeff, you might have the numbers in front of you, but I saw something recently like they're 9-2 when ahead by 10 points in the game, which 10 points in a game isn't that much anymore in the modern NBA. And to be 9-2, like that's probably one of the best records in the league, and way better than it was last year or the year before.
And yeah, how much of that is the coaching? Probably some of it. How much of that is, as we mentioned, having more veterans around to sort of stabilize the ship? How much of that is the other guys growing up? Like it's probably a combination of all of that.
Yeah. Going back to Chris Paul, Tom, you remember his introductory press conference in San Antonio this summer, and he followed that up several times after that. Every time someone would bring up the fact that the Spurs have all these young guys who he's going to be able to mentor, or who's going to be able to nurture, that type of thing, he was very quick that first day and many days after that to say, hey, I'm here to hoop. Like I'll do that type of stuff, but I'm not a coach. And what's been kind of cool to see is he's doing exactly what people expected him to do. He is mentoring, he is nurturing, but it's not in your face lecturing. Like he's not pretending to be a coach. He is mentoring by hooping.
It's
and that might be what makes it so effective. Is it's not just some old guy sitting there telling them what to do. It's watch me just take the heck over this game in the closing minutes against Oklahoma City, against Utah. Like, and it's also like every dead ball, even during live action, like never shutting up around Stephon Castle. Jeff's mentioned it before. Chris Paul never stops talking. So it's the mentoring while hooping, and then just the fun camaraderie that we get to see when the locker room doors open. That never stops. Jeff mentioned it earlier, but to watch Chris Paul be Chris Paul has been one of my favorite parts of covering this team this season.
Yeah, it's just who he is. I mean, he doesn't have to force it. It's just coming out very naturally, and yeah, I mean, and same with Harrison Barnes. I mean, Brian Wright's looking pretty good with those two guys, and with Castle, yeah.
You
think back.
One of you wrote about the Chris Paul play in the Utah game where he's, pounding the ball in the left arc and like signaling at Steph Castle to come over and like talking. It felt like that moment went on for like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Like waving him over, pointing to the floor where he wanted the screen, talking at it, and then Steph comes and does it, and it's an immediate pass and layup and one to Steph Castle. Like Chris saw that 3 moves ahead and just needed to get Castle on the same page, and that was the darndest thing I've seen in a long time. Just an immediate basket.
And Steph said, I asked Steph about that, and did you know why Chris Paul was asking for that screen? And he said, no, I thought he wanted the switch. He wanted the screen so Chris Paul could switch on to Stephon Castle's man. And almost without realizing what was happening while it was happening, Stephon Castle comes over, sets a screen, and the next thing he knows, the ball is in his hand and he has a layup and an and one. It's Chris Paul is something else, man. It really is.
Another thing
and Harrison Barnes is saying we continually give Harrison Barnes short shrift, the Western Conference Player of the Week, but he has a similar impact on this team. And I guess we got to throw in like there's a caveat here. What did Brian Wright give up to get Harrison Barnes? Oh wait, he got him for free, and he got a draft pick out of the deal. You got the Western Conference Player of the Week for free, and you got Sacramento's first round pick in like 2030. How is that even possible?
Because Sacramento wanted DeMar DeRozan that badly.
That's what it was. Like, we're not even being sarcastic here. That was the deal. It's really something else, man. High times in Spurs land. It'd be a good time to with all this positivity, with all this possible success come up, it'd be a good time to maybe subscribe to expressnews.com, or at least check it out. Subscribe to the Express News Spurs Nation newsletter. Follow Spurs writers on Blue Sky, where you get breaking up-to-date updates. Those are my favorite kinds of updates, up-to-date updates. Lots of good stuff out there for Spurs fans to check out. What have we missed in this riveting podcast, Tom?
Another thing that I think's been neat about this early season so far, Wemby, he loves all of this. He really
does.
Here, superstar, face of the franchise, generational player Wemby. He loves it. He loves seeing Chris Paul doing what he's doing. He loves Stephon Castle doing what, there was no ego there with him. Maybe I'm wrong, but what do you guys think? I mean, that dynamics, he's kind of Tim Duncan-like, and just embracing all of this and wanting to see every guy on the team succeed.
He was the biggest cheerleader in the arena those games when he was injured,
He's just, I feel like I don't talk about him enough on this podcast because I don't like sounding like some kind of Homer cheerleader, because it's just, how can you be anything but effusive in your enthusiasm, your praise for what you see from that dude? He impresses you every week, and he came back from that. He missed 3 games. Was it 3 or 4? 3.
3. Yeah.
He missed 3 after banging his knee against Anthony Davis's knee. Said it was turned out to be a little more serious than he thought it was. Immediately swelled up a little bit, but there was no structural damage. That game Saturday against Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, who were the top team in the Western Conference, hitting on all cylinders. They built how big of a lead, Jeff?
17
points.
With like a minute to go in the third quarter, though. Like, it was a late lead.
While Victor Wembanyama just looked like a guy who'd missed 3 games in a row with a swollen knee. Looked like he wasn't in game shape. Was taking some shots that we didn't love. Seemed to be out of sorts. And then, as Harrison Barnes put it after that game, flipped a switch like the great ones can do. And you probably don't want to get in the habit of doing that every game. But when Victor Wembanyama flips the switch, man, it is worth the price of admission. As it was Saturday night. That guy takes over games like few people do. And
he has a feel for the big moments, that's for sure. And like some of those threes that you don't necessarily like for him to take in the second quarter, I swear, I don't have the stats on this. This is just like a gut feel, but I swear those seem to go in a higher percentage of the time. Like when they're big shots in the fourth, he seems to knock them down.
He does.
It just feels that way. And then there was the one where he was 2 of 10 from 3, hit like a contested one to bring the Spurs within 1 in the fourth quarter against Golden State, goes down the other end and blocks a shot to start a fast break. And of course the arena is going freaking nuts now. Then comes down a little bit later, hits a deep 3 to put him up 6, and it's just those little spurts. And then at the end, like they still need baskets, and now he's finding Harrison Barnes on these little cuts for a couple of them.
That was a
Yeah,
great
that-
pass to Harrison Barnes, man.
It was two consecutive possessions. They did.
Yeah.
That
he
goes
did
back to my original point. You know, he finishes that game with 9 assists, the 2 key setups to Harrison Barnes, and he's as happy with that as anything, that he can, you know, distribute out of those double teams and make things happen for other guys.
He was just having a dog of a game for 3 quarters, and we ended up winning the game for him in the fourth. That's a thing to have, like a good skill to have.
And
Well,
this
that's this
isn't
week's-
being a homer, Mike. It's just facts.
That's this week's up-to-date update is Victor Wembanyama still good. We will Jeff is hanging in there in Utah for the first night of a back-to-back. That game will be played before this podcast reaches many of you listeners who we all appreciate. So I guess that can be part of our prediction for the rest of the week. Even though we could look foolish for predicting whatever we predict about the Utah game Tuesday night after people have already seen it. But the second night of that back-to-back is back home at the Frost against the vaunted Lakers, LeBron James, Dalton Connect, JJ Redick, and company. Then a Sunday game at Sacramento, starting a road trip that I believe Jeff will be on as well. We will not include Phoenix in this podcast inning prediction, even though that's another Tuesday game. But anyway, Utah on the road, Lakers at home, Sacramento on the road. What's your record in that game, Tom? And that stretch, Tom Orsborn, those 3 games.
You know, it's tough because that Wednesday, you got a long gap before they play at Sacramento. I can see them losing at Sacramento, but they're going to be well rested. So I'm going to go with 2-1.
2-1.
Yeah, they're going to be.
You got a loss to the Lakers?
The good times are going to roll against Utah. I think they'll beat the Lakers. And then Sacramento, maybe that long layoff will work against them. They lose at Sacramento.
An important point, I believe both the Spurs and the Lakers play on the second night of back-to-backs. There's no rest advantage there.
Lakers are at Phoenix.
Yep. Jeff McDonald, what do you have for those 3 games?
I think for like the 3rd time this year, I'm going to say they better win that Utah game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be kind of a tough week. But maybe the back-to-back thing against the Lakers, like maybe the Spurs do have a small advantage there. The Lakers are a much older team than the Spurs, so maybe they do have a shot at that one. But I always go conservative on these. I'm going to say 1-2.
All right, I'll go 2-1. It's Thanksgiving. Dish you're most looking forward to Thursday, Tom Orsborn.
Most looking forward to?
Yeah.
Well, it's being at home.
No, the dish.
Oh, the dish.
I'm sorry, I didn't enunciate properly. The dish.
I love
the side
pumpkin
dish.
pie. I love pumpkin pie with the little
Pumpkin pie.
with some cream on top. Last year, I was at the Buena Vista Cafe in San Francisco for Thanksgiving. They had the best pumpkin pie, and they had that with Irish coffee. Just topped off a great meal.
Well, you'll be home with family this time. That'll be good. Jeff likes it all. Jeff probably likes you can have a bulgogi bowl for your Thanksgiving dinner there, Jeff McDonald.
I've never heard of that. No, I'm going
One of
to
your favorite items at the Frost Bank Center.
I arrived at my hotel here in Salt Lake City, and the Jazz had left me a nice little welcome gift in a little bag, and it's got all kinds of stuff in it that I might use on Thanksgiving. Like there's a bag of peanut butter overnight oats, with flax, chia, and hemp. Hemp, is that legal?
I don't know about that.
There's a little bottle of PB Fit Classic roasted peanut powder that I could also use, and also a first aid kit for some reason.
You may need that.
The Utah Jazz know Jeff McDonald well if they're sending a first aid kit to his hotel room. That's pretty good.
I'm told there was a little note that said these were from like their sponsors. So But like
I
I got
see.
this bag thinking, oh, there'll be some snacks that I can dig into tonight, or whatever, or maybe a bottle of water or something. But no, it's overnight oats and roasted peanut powder. I don't even know if this can get through TSA on the way back,
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'm not, I'm going to, it's Thanksgiving. I'm going to be thankful. I'm not going to look a gift bag in the mouth. I'm just going to be thankful and grateful for the hospitality that the Utah Jazz have provided me so far.
excellent
Salt Lake City.
segue to the finish here, Jeff. We all should be thankful. Should be a good week. Enjoy the moments while you can. Until next time, take care of each other and keep it real.